Hello and hello and hello, LinkedIn family. I am so excited today. Just kind of a background, real quick, is LinkedIn Sales Navigator Sales Solutions did a study and they put together a playbook. And I am talking today with Amanda Van Nuys, who's a marketer at LinkedIn, who had a big piece, a big role in this. So, Amanda, welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. I'm excited to have it too. And thank you so much for inviting me onto the live. This is a big day for us in LinkedIn Sales Solutions today. So excited to tell you more about what we launched today.
Oh, I'm so excited. So I got to spend some time watching the launch. They worked through and went through a lot of the value of this playbook, but I'm so excited. So I know before we get started, we need to start with like that LinkedIn tradition is what is not on your LinkedIn profile that you can share with us.
Sure. I love this tradition. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I grew up in Los Angeles, kind of in the heart of show business world. And my best friend was in 7th and 8th grade was Anika Portier, and I went to the Bahamas with the Portiers, so that was kind of rad. As we
That's
said,
amazing. What an incredible opportunity. That's awesome. And I'm sure there are many other celebrity engagements there. So that's really fun. But let's just jump
yeah,
in. So please share a little bit about what inspired this research and, kind of your involvement in bringing together this incredible playbook for deep sales.
sure. So I have been with LinkedIn for 6 years. And only more recently came to the sales solution side of the business. I was previously on the talent side. And the role that I was given the opportunity to play is to focus on a strategic pillar we had within integrated marketing, which is um, um, uh, thinking about how to raise awareness and understanding of deep sales. Really, that's our thought leadership platform. It's something, it's a term that Gail Moody Bird, our VP of marketing, coined almost 2 years ago now.
Mhm.
And so it's a term that we've used a lot in our marketing, and we talk a lot to customers about. And really, it's just a set of best practices that we believe salespeople should be doing to have higher levels of success. Um, my the mission before me, should I choose to accept it, which I did, was how can we really prove that deep sales works? Um, and to what extent? And does it really impact quota attainment? And so that was the challenge and sort of the hypothesis that we were working with as I went into a partnership with Ipsos, a globally renowned research firm, an incredible team. They were just a dream to work with. Worked with them on a big survey with we surveyed over 2,000 sellers globally and 500 buyers globally, just about what they do every day, what are their perceptions, how they're using technology, and a whole range of things that we were asking about, and we found some really interesting data, which I'm excited to dig into.
Yeah, and we've got some of those amazing data points and how that relates to sales in just a little bit. But before we kind of go into that data, let's talk about what is deep sales. So when Gail came up with the concept, which I love,
Mhm.
and even the title of today is uncovering the secrets to move from shallow to deep, from a
Yep.
shallow to a deep seller. Like, talk a little bit about kind of the difference between the two and what does that really mean to be in deep sales or to be a deep seller?
Such a good question. Something that we have defined in the report now. And I think intuitively, deep sales is really about really understanding your customer, your prospect, understanding who they are, the company that they're in, the industry that they're in, their business challenges, how you can then provide a solution, a product or service or combination thereof to help them solve those problems. And, when I think about a deep seller, and I can talk a little bit about the behaviors in a bit. That's somebody who does their homework and focuses on the relationship building and having the conversations that matter, versus a shallow seller that kind of is a little bit more transactional, sends a lot of cold emails. I mean, all the things that we think about when we think of like a seller who just doesn't necessarily put in the work that builds relationships.
I love that. Yeah, they're typically the ones that connect and pitch. There are even folks like, to me, I'm blown away when I get on a call and someone is selling me, and the first question they ask is, "So where are you located?"
Like, what?
And I'm like, like the easiest thing is to look at my LinkedIn profile and know where I'm located. So I'm absolutely blown away by how shallow sellers can be.
Oh,
And, as we look at the impact that being a deep seller can make, and, between AI and so many things around account IQ that we'll get to in a little bit, that LinkedIn offers, just simply doing your homework. Just,
right?
yeah. And sometimes we'll say, at the very least, 2 things in 2 minutes. Go find out something about them that's personal before the call. So I love that. And, I think the evolution from being a transactional salesperson to really being more relationship driven has never been more important. We have AI, we have all of these automation, which I think is terrible in some ways and fabulous in others. Right, like email automation. I love automation on LinkedIn breaks the user agreement. Not a good thing. But helping me to improve my post or helping me to write a better marketing message. Like there's such great value in the AI, but when you lose the relationship and the customization and the personalization to that blanket messaging, we get in trouble. And so AI has made folks, I think, in some ways more shallow instead of leveraging the value of AI to get deeper. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about how to use some of that as we go through. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but
We can go there.
yeah,
We're gonna go there.
all right, let's go there. Let's talk a little bit about, so I know in the study, 75% of sellers that beat quota embraced AI and sales intelligence technology, not automation as much as, for social listening and learning. So in Sales Navigator, that's account IQ.
Yep.
How are deep sellers using AI, especially the account IQ piece of LinkedIn, like for the pre-call planning and research?
Exactly. So first of all, just taking a little bit of a step back, we found that over 80% of sellers are excited about AI and think it'll help them do their jobs better, right? So there's a tremendous amount of optimism around it. But at the same time, about the same amount, about 80% of sellers said they need training on how to use it. There's still a lot of confusion around how to use AI generally. And I'm not talking about Sales Navigator specifically at this moment, but just generally, like, this seems like it's helpful. I don't really know how to harness it. We did find that sellers are using it basically in 3 ways. The first is around efficiencies. So draft an email for me that I can then use to customize, right? Using generative AI to do that. Other kinds of time-saving elements, AI is very good at efficiency. The second use case is around research, right? Tell me everything I need to know about oil and gas, right, in this region, right, and help me get smart on something quickly. So that's another use case, not quite as popular as the efficiency piece, but also a lot of sellers tap into that. The third piece, which I thought was really interesting, and it's not as popular, but it's going to emerge, is around account planning and forecasting, and using AI to do some of that to more accurately forecast your quarter and your book of business. So I thought that was fascinating. When it comes to how, I mean, first of all, Sales Navigator, we've had AI embedded in LinkedIn and in Sales Navigator for a while now, right? This is not Like we hopped on the bandwagon. This is something that's embedded in our technology and has been for a long time. And you mentioned account IQ. I mean, deep sellers, one of the behaviors that deep sellers do is around doing industry and company research, right? Making sure you get smart on a prospect or customer before you hop on a call, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
You can generally gather a lot of really good information on the internet and various and sundry places and hunt and peck and put together, a picture of generally what an account might be looking like. Or you can go into Sales Navigator, push account IQ, and you get all the data, and you get
a summary.
And a summary, like a dossier, like here's everything you need to know, generated by AI based on the LinkedIn data, proprietary data. Like we know when people change jobs, right? Because people update their profile. That's critical information. We'll give you industry information, competitive information, all of those things that are core differentiating elements for deep sellers. And that's just one aspect of deep selling. And I'm happy to go into a little bit more about sort of how we got to these behaviors and what that impact is. But AI in general, AI and sales intelligence tools like Sales Navigator, they just make it easy and faster and more complete and better information. So that's where I see those technologies come in.
So I love that. And, a shallow seller will show up at a meeting. I mean, this is, and say, so, Amanda, what keeps you up at night? That's a shallow seller.
My job? Right? No, I'm joking.
Well, yeah. But that, I mean, that is this traditional, I'm coming in and I'm doing discovery from ground zero.
Right.
Right. But what you've learned through all of this research really is deep sellers crush their quota by nearly 2 times. So talk a little bit about why taking that time to do that research, to learn about the industry, to learn about the company. What did you find in the study of why they're quota crushing nearly double?
I know, it's amazing. That is literally the money shot, and metaphorically too.
Yeah.
So let me kind of take you on a little bit of a journey, an origin story of how we got here and what this research is really based on, which I think is helpful to understand the context. So when we embarked on really understanding and proving the value of deep sales, we worked with Ipsos to identify 104 different behaviors that sellers do. Now, they do more than that, right? There are a lot of things that we do in the day, but we really tried to make them like very representative across the whole sales cycle, from the beginning of like your prospecting to beyond the sale and into, renewal, like everything through that process, right? And we asked them, all of the sellers, and it was a long survey to be. It was a long one. They answered all these questions, and then we also asked them about quota attainment. And what we looked at was, okay, let's look at the sellers who are killing their quota, who are exceeding their quota. What do they do? And which behaviors are most highly correlated to exceed quota, right? We came in with a hypothesis around, these are the 3 habits we instinctively know, just based on, this is our business and we talk to customers and this is our product, and right, like we came knowing a lot and having a very strong hypothesis, which was proven and then some in this research. But and then we looked at it and we found 10 what we call needle movers, or these are the things that the sellers who exceed quota do that are different than everybody else. And what was fascinating about that is that, like, yes, everybody does company research. You look at the website, right? Like it's important that you still do these things, but that's not what differentiates a deep seller, for example. In addition to company information, they also look at industry. They look at what are the challenges, the trends, the competitive landscape, the environmental issues, the political or policy, like they look at the whole thing.
Mhm.
And that's what makes them great, because then they can really communicate with a customer at a much deeper level, versus like, tell me what keeps you up at night. Like that,
Right.
that's just not gonna demonstrate that you've done your homework, right?
Mhm.
Um, so from those 10 behaviors, we simplified them into 3 habits. Deep sales has always been about 3 habits, but really, again, they're just best practices. And what we found was really like, to me, it was surprising and somehow not surprising. And I'll tell you why it's not surprising in a minute. First, we found that deep sellers, or sellers who do most, if not all, of these behaviors, exceed their quota by nearly 2 times. So that's the 2 times number that you just mentioned. Again, they didn't just meet their quota, they exceeded their quota by 2 times,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
They have that
Mhm.
versus shallow sellers who do none or maybe a couple of these deep sales behaviors. They have more than 6 times the chance of missing their quota versus deep sellers.
That's
It's a
huge.
lot. It's 6.5 times the chance of missing their quota versus deep sellers. So that's amazing to me. Like, that to me says deep sales works. Pay
Mhm.
attention,
Mhm.
because this will actually increase your chances of going to club. Like,
Right.
right? It's a little more job security. It's like all these things, good things happen, right?
Yeah.
When B2B sellers succeed, for both buyers and sellers. And I'll tell you, the other
Yeah.
piece of this that was really important to me was that we also, I mentioned, we surveyed 500 buyers, B2B
Mhm.
buyers globally across a
Mhm.
wide variety of industries. And a lot of the things, and specifically, we focused on um, like, not their buying process and their decision-making process. I think there's a lot of literature and research about that. We really wanted to focus on the perceptions that they had around sellers, and what do they want? What do they need?
Mhm.
What turns them off and they're not gonna respond to you? Um, and a lot of the data that we found on the buyer side actually supports the behavior. So, for example, doing your industry research is important on the buyer side, but or on the seller side, but by the way, the number one thing that buyers look for in a sales partner is, do you understand my business, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Understand do you understand my business challenges, right? So those things are validating and supporting of one another, which is I think what makes this report really strong.
Yeah, and a word you use that I really like is buyer sentiment.
Hmm.
Like, and I think, the way you make your buyer feel
Yeah.
is so important. In a world where things are really, you're fighting for the same wallet, there's lots of competition.
Hmm.
It is the relationship, and it is the way that your buyer feels. Like, do they feel like they matter? Do they feel like you invested time into learning about them? So I was talking with a prospect, and I happened to notice that she was active in Model UN, which was probably in high school.
Right.
But my son was in the Model UN in high school. And that was at the bottom of her profile. But I mentioned that, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, that's crazy. Like, I haven't thought about that in so many years. And I talked about how he went to Prague and like all these things, right?
Cool.
And that had nothing to even do with her business, but it had to do with her, that she felt like she mattered.
Yep.
So I just want to throw that in too as well.
Absolutely. And it also built trust, right? Because you had this common connection. I mean, we talk about warm introductions, we talk about finding those commonalities so that you can connect
Right.
as people, right? Um, I think buyer sentiment was I think it's my favorite part of the report, to be honest. And a couple things jumped out at me that I thought were really interesting, and a little bit surprising to me. Um, one of which was, buyers really like sellers. They like them, like, way more than I thought they
Right.
thought they would, to be honest. I mean, when we asked buyers what words best describe your experience with B2B sellers, the top two were consultative and trustworthy. And by the way, we had a long list of like positive and negative kinds of negative, but like, negative words, right? So
Mhm.
top of the list, consultative and trustworthy. The bottom was unscrupulous and untrustworthy.
Of course. Yeah.
The bottom. And so I think there's a lot more buyer love for sellers and proof that investing in those relationships actually do um, improve buyer sentiment, and it actually showed up in the data, which was really, really cool.
I love it. There is a stat that I pulled off of LinkedIn, but it was a Gartner stat from years ago. It said 74% of buyers choose the sales rep and the company that was first to add value and insight.
You know what? I love that stat, and we have we found something similar in the report. And this was the other thing that really jumped out to me, it kind of warmed my heart a little, which was sort of speaks to that point, the power of relationships.
Mhm.
So we found that roughly half of buyers continue to purchase from the same seller, even when the seller changed companies and has a different solution to sell.
Oh,
What?
I love that.
Right? And
I love that.
on the flip side, when the seller changes companies and they reach out to buyers, they 50% say they sold to the same buyer twice. Like, this is
Mm.
so cool. What this means is like the power of the trusted relationship, the old school term Rolodex.
Yeah.
You have to look that one up, friends. Maybe some of you. But that power, like those relationships are persistent regardless of what company the buyer or seller are at. And that just validates what Gartner found a few years ago. And those relationships that sellers have, they will have them for a long time and take them with them wherever they go, which is cool.
I love that. I really do. A big piece of what you pulled out of this research was buyer and I'm sorry, so seller behaviors, right? Like how what behaviors drove deep sales,
Yep.
right? And I think you guys came up with 10 behaviors that
Mhm.
created kind of deep sellers or made up of deep
Mhm.
sellers. And I know that's a big list, but what were some
Yeah.
of the behaviors that really popped out for you and said, boy, either it was a surprise or it confirmed what you believed? Like what was some of those?
Um, so just giving people a little bit of a framework around what these three things are. Um, the first one is around prioritizing high potential accounts. So that's really about like deciding what targets you want to go after, right?
Mhm.
The second habit is all around relationships and people. So that includes things like multi-threading and warm introductions and all of those pieces around really establishing and cultivating those relationships very thoughtfully and consciously. The third piece is around how to really have ongoing relationship with a customer prospect by getting information, whether that be through hidden allies or through news alerts or other means to be able to have relevant and timely outreach,
Mm.
right? To
Mhm.
continue those conversations and provide value in every interaction. So that's kind of the framework of how the three habits play out. I think that what was really interesting that deep sellers, they multi-thread and they multi-thread like crazy. So we found that deep sellers have 7 or more relationships in with decision makers, 7 or more relationships with buying committee, 7 or more relationships with influencers outside
Mhm.
of the buying committee. So it could be some of those people are the same people. So I'm not going to say they have 21 relationships per account. That's
Right, right.
probably not the case. But shallow sellers, you know,
They
they
have one
yeah,
point of contact.
probably. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's a huge difference between buyers or sellers who are deep and shallow.
So we talk a lot about socially surrounding an account,
Yes.
right? And we use obviously Sales Navigator to map that out.
Yep.
But if you find yourself, I'm just throwing this out, if you find yourself with one champion,
Mhm.
first of all, LinkedIn research tells us there's a 20% turnover year over year. That means 1 out of 5 of your prospects is moving on.
Yep.
And all that work you did inside an account to build one relationship is, you have to start over. So the socially surrounding is really important.
Mhm.
But one of the things I didn't put in when we were chatting is going back in person really matters. Like in-person meetings matter again. So here, whether you're doing this virtually or in person, make sure that you are mapping out your 7 people or 10 people, right?
Yeah.
Who are all the people that are going to touch the sale from the top of the funnel all the way through decision making to the end users, right?
Yep.
Because the stronger you multi-threaded, the stronger the thread is, right? Like you've got, it's if you build a rope from thread, it's a really strong rope. So that socially surrounding an organization, it has a huge impact. And now your study shows that that's actually accurate. One other thing I want to mention, prioritize high potential accounts.
Yes.
When you've identified maybe top 100 that really meet your criteria, now search to see, do I know anyone at any of these accounts?
Exactly.
Do I know, do any of my clients know people at these accounts? So in my opinion, prioritizing high potential accounts is not just they fit all my criteria,
Yep.
but I have relationships that I can leverage in order to start trust-based conversations faster.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Sales Navigator makes this all easy.
Right.
I gotta say it out loud. And for those that haven't tried Sales Navigator, you must try it just to check it out because it's amazing. I think you're absolutely right, and I think that there are also things that are signals that will also impact your ability to prioritize those accounts. So, for example, if a decision maker has only been in seat for 90 days, people leave jobs, but they also come into jobs, right? They're much more open to looking at a new solution, right? Like there are a whole bunch of signals within an account that signal a propensity to be open to buying or at least exploring a solution or starting a relationship. And so I think all of those things go into that soup, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and those are all things that deep sellers do, right? They take the time to really think about, because time is money, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
prioritizing the right accounts is kind of step one for sure.
So we talked about so there are the 3 categories, right? So habits,
Yep.
prioritize high potential accounts, identify and build key buyer relationships. The third one, find hidden allies. I think I kind of played into that third one. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Well, I think that, finding people out, even former colleagues, former people you may have gone to school with, whatever, like finding these people who may be at the company and have a different perspective on what a buying decision looks like or what a committee looks like or what the dynamics are within a company. I think that's really helpful context and intel and can give you really valuable information that maybe you're not getting from the key decision makers, right? So, and deep sellers make a point to try to find those people. I think one of the other things, and I know we've been talking a lot about technology, right? And technology is really important. I also, to your point around in person, I really want to emphasize that this is about relationships, right? And so that in-person piece is actually really important. Over 60% of buyers expect to meet a seller in person before they sign the dotted line.
Wow.
Right? That's amazing. And that's like now data. That's post-pandemic, friends. That's now.
Yeah.
So like our COO, Dan Shapiro, has made a point of having our salespeople get in front of our customers in person, get out there, meet people. He's done a ton of customer visits. It's a very high priority for us as a company to be able to do these things. And so I think that's one big piece of it. And another piece of the habits that really surprised me kind of came out of the blue, like, oh, what's that? Which is Deep sellers ask for feedback after every interaction that they have with a buyer. What?
After every interaction.
Every interaction. And it's so wonderful and vulnerable and smart, right? Did I frame your challenges correctly? How could I have done better in that meeting with your boss? How can I, did I get this the right way around, right? Like really making sure that they get that feedback and not just like, did that go okay? Yes, no, right? Really asking more provocative questions so that you get the data and the information and the direction that you need to be able to continue to move the conversation along in a really productive way, and in a way that is best for the buyer. So there are pieces of this that are just very human, and those are also important takeaways.
So I love this. And I mean, we could go on forever and ever. And I know we've got so many people that have downloaded this already. Just the scan, we have 6. And I'm sure from the link, we've got lots of folks. And we're around 50 live right now, but we had reached well over 60 at one point. So this is a great turnout today, which is wonderful. And I'm sure in replay, we'll get tons and tons more. But I highly recommend, I mean, Amanda and her team, all of Sales Solutions really put an enormous amount of effort and resources behind creating this playbook. I think it's brilliant. I've took a little dive into it today, but I didn't get into the deep end yet. I will be doing deep dives, but I'm really excited to teach this, right? Like what I love, a lot of this we've been teaching for years, but now we have the data to back it up. And it's not just, hey, I think this is a great idea, but if you follow this, you are going to 2 times quota. Exactly. Right? Like that's the statistic that this is data that backs it. I'm really excited. Okay. So my last question in this, and then please share anything, is, what do you want sellers to take away from all of this?
So I think that there are really, I can answer this in 2 parts, really. The first is for salespeople out there. Anyone can be a deep seller. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need Sales Navigator, although if you have it, great. But you really don't. Anybody can do these things. And even if you fold a couple more of these habits into your morning routine as you're drinking your coffee, like think about how you can integrate a couple of these things and you will see them make a difference. And so I think that's my one takeaway, that we purposely made it a playbook. We purposely made it accessible and actionable. And I think the second message I have for folks out there is for sales leaders and executives. It's one thing to read a report, but then it's another to think about, okay, if my sellers are supposed to be doing these things, how can I create a culture of deep sales? How do I train my team? How do I create incentive structures to put in place to reward the behaviors, right?
Yeah.
And like the stunning part is only 18% of sellers globally are deep sellers, right? 46% are shallow sellers and the rest are kind of in the middle. But if 18% of shallow sellers, what if you could create a team of 30% of deep sellers? What about 60%? What about if your entire team was just an incredible superstar team of deep sellers? What if you could do that? What would your organization look like? What would your revenue look like? So I would encourage sales leaders to look at this and think about how they can incorporate some of these best practices into their teams.
Can I yes and that?
Yes.
What I'm going to say to sales leaders is change your KPIs. Your KPIs, how many dials it's just not effective anymore. Can you cold call and get someone on the phone? Sure. But your statistics are so much lower. That is complete shallow selling, right? Slow down your outreach to speed up your outcome.
Ooh, I want to needle point that on a pillow. That's good.
Well, the other one, we talk about that all the time. The other one is detach from what the prospect is worth to you and attach to what you're worth to the prospect.
That's another good one.
and deep selling, the research and the insights that you can gather make that prospect matter. You'll have insights that you can share. You get industry insights that are important to them. And I'm going to give another tip is do a little bit of research on the industries your prospects serve. So not just your prospects industry, but take a look at their clients industry and the trends that are happening there. While they may know a lot about their own industry, if you can bring insights on the companies they serve, and by the way, look at their recommendations on LinkedIn or the company logos on their website. Look up those companies and go to Account IQ and pull a summary on what's happening in their clients' industries. And the amount of value that you can bring to the table is absolutely immeasurable. If you really want to stand out, try that.
I love that. That is next level. And we're going to put that in the survey next year. That's smart.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. You're amazing. I am absolutely blessed and grateful to be part of the official LinkedIn Sales Insider group. I mean, I think there's 37 of us globally, and I feel grateful to have access to you and your team. But what I'll say to everyone is go follow Amanda. She may not connect with everyone, but follow her and maybe, fine.
Connect with me. Yeah, absolutely.
You're so accessible. Connect. Really, the value that you are bringing to the sales community is, I guess it is measurable now because we have data. I was going to say immeasurable, but it is measurable. And I love that. And we thank you so much. I appreciate you and everything you and your team are doing and all that hard work over the last couple of years, man. I can't speak for everyone in the industry, but I do believe this will transform not just the way people sell, but the experience of the buyer. And I think that is so important. So we appreciate you.
Well, Brynne, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. And thank you to everybody who's been watching. Feel free to connect with me. If you have questions about the report, feel free to ping me. I am accessible. And again, thank you all very much, and go check out the report and let me know what you think.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.